Hey, that's my slide.
That's your slide, Ron. So I think that we may have loaded things in a slightly different spot. So tonight's just about having fun. But welcome everyone to tonight's presentation of OTF Connects, and especially welcome to Rod Lucier, who's leading us through the third part of his three-part series on the implications of technology. And tonight it's about finding balance. So I will hand things over to you, Rod.
Well, thanks very much, Louise. I know, like those of us that use technology, it can really be a pill to swallow. That's not easy when it hangs up a bit. So thanks for mucking through and troubleshooting that and getting back with some clear audio for us and helping us get connected. Everyone understanding where we're going and what's going on. Welcome everybody, and thanks for taking the time out of your evening from your family and from your classroom and from school prep to join us for this session. This is the third of three sessions. This is the last one. I'm going to give you a brief review to remind you of the things that we talked about. I know some familiar faces here, that some names that were in some of the earlier sessions, but for those that may not have been, we'll touch on a few things. I just want to introduce myself briefly and tell you that I've been teaching for 30 plus years, and the plus is now I'm in free agency a bit and doing some professional development related to design thinking and making stuff. And I'm also teaching at Western University, where I teach instructional technology courses for practicing teachers. And if you're interested in knowing anything else about me, there's just a few things that you can read about the things that I'm interested in. But project-based learning and design thinking are sort of a professional thing that I did in my classroom that I love to share right now. And more recently, I've been looking at technologies that young people are using, and I was one of the staunchest advocates for having kids bring their mobile devices to school so that we could use them for education. And much of my discoveries over the past number of months have caused me to rethink some of that. So I'm going to be continuing to share some of the reflections and ideas around that with you. But let's start just on this slide. I'm going to make sure I've got the right situation here. I think what I did is I moved slides in the wrong location, so I've been watching slides on my screen. But this is me. It's just a quick quick glimpse of me. And my question is, what's your role in education? And just to give us a little bit of context, so if you could use that text tool and maybe choose a font that's a nice chunky font, maybe 24 or 36, something like that. What's your role? What is it that you do? Where do you teach? What is it you teach? What are you doing? So maybe just pick a nice funky color and a nice font of maybe 36. We got lots of room there for just a few of us in here. And we can just type up what we do. Occasional teacher in Waterloo region. I'm assuming that's Waterloo region. You know what? There's going to be fewer and fewer occasional teachers. From what I'm hearing, my daughter just graduated from Teachers College, and she's already doing a lot of occasional work. JK and K-3 prep, good. Secondary guidance, very good. Okay. So, and we already know we're scattered widely across the province. So whatever your role is, we're going right from 12 down to JK. So just even though there's just a few of us, we're sort of running the full gamut and the full spread of K-12 education. So let me just take you to a brief reminder of what we did first. Going back to April, some of you were in attendance and some of you may have watched the presentation. We looked at how apps are and phones and devices are trying to get our attention. And we also looked at the flip side of that, how young people around the world, and adults too, are using those tools to try to get attention themselves. So while the tech companies are making these devices largely free to us, they're free and we're paying for them with our attention. So nothing's really free in life, and that's been true for a long, long time. But one of the things that people have been less aware of is this fact that the devices in our pockets are really designed to function to get us to click buttons and pay attention, just as someone who might be addicted to gambling might pay attention to a slot machine. And the people that have brought this analogy to my attention are actually the designers themselves. And I'd like to introduce you to one of them to start. I'm going to ask you to, in a moment, go and meet Tristan Harris and hear him speak for just 1 minute. But he knows that it's just like a slot machine, that we're actually, every time we scroll with our finger down a list of things on a feed, be it on Twitter or Facebook or Pinterest, every time we do that, we don't know what we're going to get, and it's kind of like a surprise. Every time we look at something that we posted and look for likes to see if anybody paid attention or commented on something that we wrote, every time we check that, it's like playing a slot machine. And when there is something, that surprise, that wow, that randomness of that is one of the things that makes it addictive. But the trick is that the designers are making sure that our experience is as addictive as possible. Now, here's what I'd like you to do. This fella, Tristan Harris, is he runs a website. I'm going to find a link to it. Big Think is not the name of the website. There's actually it slipped my mind. There's too many things for me to keep track of. But Tristan, if you do a search for Tristan Harris and what he's about, you'll see links to his organizations that he started that are causing us all, leading us all to think more carefully about the technologies we're using. So if we could visit, I'd like you to hear this fellow speak for just 60 seconds. I've queued up the start. Thanks, Sonia, for that link. I've queued up the start of a video, and what I'd like you to do is just try and visit this briefly for about 1 minute. Let me get it here. I'm not sure if Louise sees
Sorry,
it there.
Rod, is
I
that
put a secondary
the
link
second
there.
YouTube link?
Let me go to it here.
Oh.
Pause him so you don't hear me through my computer.
I've got it for you here.
I'm sorry, I've got it here. It's one of the YouTube links. Let me just paste it in the chat, okay? Because I know there's a few that I've shared with you, and it might. Oh dear, is it this one? But my invitation is, if we get people to watch just 60 seconds of this, watch them from 6 minutes and 2 seconds to 7 minutes and 2 seconds, and then come back in the room if you could, and you'll get to meet Tristan. Hi, Mike. We just sent folks out to just see a little clip of video, and we'll give people just a moment to get back and rejoin us. Okay, is everybody back? I'm going to assume we're back. It's been about 2 minutes. Hopefully people had a chance to see at least 60 seconds of Tristan. But the big thing that I think hearing him talk about the way apps are being designed to actually be distracting intentionally and to pull you away and to keep you away. And the real goal of the app is just to keep you there and to get you to come back. So the algorithms that are being programmed in every time are just to get you to come back. So very much it's about the Skinner box, right? So the mouse that clicks the button, if he gets a random amount of food, he's going to come back again and again and again. But if it's really predictable, he'll just come back when he's hungry. If he clicks it and he gets food, he'll just come back when he's hungry. And so we're being programmed to a large degree the way the mice back in the day were being programmed and taught that their brains crave this unexpected reward. And so the devices in our pockets and in our backpacks are just set up exactly for that purpose. So in our real life, it looks like these kinds of questions where we're always wondering and always checking and going for that information to try to see if we've got new stuff. And the end result of that is what tonight's presentation is all about. Now, Chemhaf is a multimillionaire, was one of the first hires at Facebook, and now part owner of the Golden State Warriors, who are playing basketball tonight in the semifinals in the NBA. But this search for popularity is leaving some vacantness there. And the research that's out there, we talked about in the second session. Teachers like Alia Griffin at Santa Clara University acknowledges that, you know what, the students in her class lose their attention to that phone and that device. And the research that we looked at with those devices is about the fact that when they're on your desktop, you cannot resist the temptation. Your brain actually offloads a section of it to attend to the possibility that it may vibrate or it may ring. And performance of young people when phones are left on their desk is below students who have their phones completely away. We shared that information in the second session, and if you're interested in revisiting it in more detail, you can do that on your own. But this is part of the research that I quoted and shared, and it's actually like being tired. Your brain is functioning as if it's tired. Your performance is that degraded by having it nearby. Now, Ramsey Brown's another fellow who's founded Dopamine Labs. He's actually working with companies on health apps. So if you think about your smartphone, or some of you maybe wear a Fitbit, and the way it tracks and has people do positive things, he's working on trying to make sure that your phone helps you be more fit or more active or do positive things. And for mental health applications and for fitness applications, that's what he's doing. But he acknowledges that designers out there are always tweaking what they're doing. The experiments that they're running are very subtle, and you may not notice them. So if you're on Instagram and some people like your photos, sometimes you'll notice that a whole bunch of people like a photo at the same time. It's really kind of weird. But in fact, Instagram will hold back chunks of things that were liked and present them to you a little bit later on, so that they're feeding into this randomness of getting chunks of good things or nothing or just single feedback. And those experiments are happening sort of all the time. So the second session was really about dealing with the fact that what's the result of all of this interaction? We're connected. Like we used to listen to things and watch things on television together, but now we largely do that separate from one another. And that synchrony of one time of being in a community experiencing media has been and changed now, so that we're part of a culture where we binge watch things. My slides are jumping back and forth.
Oh dear.
I'm sorry about that. But the slides that the things that people are watching are a lot of times not in sync. They're separate from one another. So people are binge watching their favorite show and telling you, hey, go watch this show, it's fantastic. And we're not having that water cooler moment where we're talking about who shot JR. Or, I'm sorry, Louise. Everything okay?
Hi, Rod. Yeah, your audio is starting to cut out a little bit more. Are you still experiencing some weird stuff with your slides?
A lot of what we're doing is independently experiencing software. We're independently experiencing YouTube videos. We're independently experiencing things on Netflix, but we're not doing it as a community. And that loneliness is coming out of that. In fact, the media that we're seeing in using our phones, Byron Reeves talks about his students at Stanford, and he's very clear to say, hey, I only studied my students, but my students view 3 hours of content, and they're turning their phone on and off about 300 times. And the bits that they're watching, yeah, sorry. Yeah, they were jumping back and forth on me for some reason. Would it be wise of me to duck out and then duck back in? Sorry for the audio issues that we're having. A little glitchy. Should I duck out? Check, check. Okay, so I think what I'll do is just make sure that I'm taking my time and be slow to advance slides in case the audio is a little bit behind them, if that's okay with everybody. This is really a good test because we're revisiting a little bit of the content that we had in the past. So other folks that are finding similar findings in their research are people like Nicholas Carr, who's an author of a number of books and articles related to what technology is doing to us. But I mean, we looked at, I think this is one of the quotes we looked at last time about this idea about that need to see the next thing is what we gravitate to that phone. And the next thing we will see is not what our audience provides us necessarily, but it's the next thing that the app developer thinks will keep us coming back. And it might be current, or it might be something old, or it might be something totally different than you expect. But that next new thing is what you're looking for, and that's what the app developers are going to be sure to get to you. So the effects on the brain are the things that we looked at last time. Just to review, this was from part 2. And a lot of the research by Jean Twenge at San Diego State University really talks about the more you use a phone, the more you use a screen, the less happy you are. And this should be, this research should be known by everyone. The more you do other things, the more you're out walking, the more you're sitting and having a coffee with people, the more you're in conversation, the more you're playing board games, the more you're in nature, the more you're doing work, those people are happier. And life satisfaction goes down when you spend more time on phone. And Jean is very specific in her research, because her findings are that to be connected with those friends and colleagues that you really want to connect to, she says up to about 1.5 hours to 2 hours is what the happiest people have that amount of time per day that they're connecting and using those tools. Beyond that, it's a very slippery slope to not being happy. And if that's one of the goals in life is to be happy, then these devices and the things that they do for us aren't necessarily getting us the joy that we want. They're getting us the attention that the device makers want, and getting us the attention we think we want, but it's not necessarily leading us to joy. But all of this is leading to this big question about how do we sort of juggle all that? How do we manage that perfect amount of connecting with people online that is going to bring us joy, and doing those other things in our lives that give us joy? And this is the biggest, most important question that we'll spend the bulk of our evening talking about and thinking about. So hopefully we're going to keep, the audio is going to keep up with the slides. But let's move to this. This is one of the questions that is going to come up twice. We're going to look at challenges with mobile technology at home and at school. But let's start with at home. At home, think about this for a second. Have you got a young person who is using a device who disappears from your life and goes into a bedroom with their phone? Have you got young people who are totally immersed in games? Have you got people that are staying up later than they should? Is there anything that you'd care to type on this screen that indicates a key word or a phrase about something that you're dealing with at home, or that you notice that maybe is a change in the way technology is being used in your household? Just take for just a minute, and you can reflect either on yourself or on those that you hang around with, those that you live with. Difficulty thinking of anything? Thanks for taking the time to type that, though. Getting kids to park their phones at night. Okay, that's one of the, we'll be looking at possible solutions that might help with that. Yeah, it seems like everything requires a screen. I mean, a lot of people cut the cord to cable television, but they use screens. Not able to leave work at work. Yeah, you're sort of always, you're always able to be found by email, right? Screen hopping, less FaceTime. Yeah, so these issues that are sort of coming up here, that are being mentioned, the fact that we're always on, always attentive, whether it's for our own social engagement or for that work engagement, whether it's email or other things, it's taking away that quality time, the time we used to work for the weekends and for after hours so that we could relax, and now we spend a lot of those hours trying to get ahead of things. And at school, specifically around young people, what types of things are you seeing or noticing in young people's behavior that might be challenging for you as a teacher, or challenging as an adult just watching young people? Yeah, distraction. Yeah, unable to attend for a length of time. This is something that the woman earlier from San Diego State was talking about. Nasty text and dealing with the fallout from that inappropriate use of the technology, right? Yeah. And I think if you're a vice principal at a high school or a principal in an elementary school, you're starting to see a lot of their time and attention being taken up by out-of-school communication that is inappropriate. Need for immediate gratification, right? And so with what the fellow Byron Reeves at Stanford was talking about, is this idea that 10 seconds at a time is how much of those 300 checks is just really quick, check, 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 and the need for something right away. The idea about working long and hard to get an outcome, doing an art project that may take many hours, or a school project or a research project that might take a long time, is a lot harder than these short bits of things. Even speech is different. And one of the things we looked at last time, is the reality that the language is changing, and the way we text is really changing the way we interact and communicate with one another. And it's sort of a different type of language. Oh, thanks very much, everybody. It's really good. Keeping their focus, yes. Focus and attention. There's something that the gravity of that screen is really remarkable to try and overcome it. So Jean had the quote in one of the articles, or actually I was listening to an interview that she did on CBC, and the link to that is included in the slide notes at the very end. But she sees parents as digital pioneers. We're parenting children, and we've never had to do this before, where this black screen is there. And I would say teachers really are digital pioneers as well, because teachers have never had to teach where any student at any time can check any fact. They have the sum of all knowledge on the internet in their pocket at any time. And they could pull it out and check any fact or information, or they could write any information onto the internet in a variety of ways. They could also use a device to connect to anyone on the planet virtually, and we've never had that before. So really we are pioneers just as parents are. So what are the things that, this is, to me, this picture, I see this now because I've been tuned into it. Every place I go, I notice this. Where if you go to a McDonald's, just to share a really short story. I went to a McDonald's it was on a Saturday afternoon, getting tires swapped, putting the fresh rubber on my tires and taking snow tires off. And so I took my son to get a smoothie at McDonald's, and there was a mom there with 3 young children, and the young children were eating their Happy Meals. And you know how those Happy Meal boxes they used to have games and things like that on that kids could play and interact with, and there's a little toy in there. But the mom was sort of eating French fries and was on her phone. Like, this is too normal. It's too normal for adults to spend time facing this screen and not facing our young children, or not facing our colleagues across the table from us. It's become too normalized, and this is one of the sad realities, is that we're not modeling the types of behaviors we should be modeling for young people. And in fairness to us, this is new to us. We've never had an environment where such a device was put in our hands at a very young age, and we really, as a teacher, when we first got these phones, and remember there was the term crackberry when Blackberries first came out. I'm going back about 10, 12 years. But that need for checking information, even for professional information, was all-encompassing for a lot of people. And now we find if you walk through a mall, a shopping center, some people's living rooms, you'll notice that all of the adults in that space are spending their time looking at screens. So one of the things that we're challenged to do is to model the behavior that we want to see in young people. This is actually, I'll mention this now, but the slides, when I post the slides on slideshare.net, and for some reason the upload was really slow tonight, so I abandoned it so that it would be available, that I'd have some bandwidth there. I'm going to put a link here, slideshare.net/thecleversheep. The slides for this presentation will be up there, but they won't be up there until later tonight. And if you're interested in reading any of the research, there are direct hyperlinks to those articles from some of the slides and from the credits at the very end of the piece, the presentation. But this study is talking about the fact that parents are really not modeling what they should for young people. And I mean, we have just a little bit of time about that, but the research that was done was by an organization that does ferry rides. Okay, so they have families go on ferries from one place to another, and the ferry tour operators got together and they surveyed 2,000 families. And what they found is that the amount of time people spend in family time averaged out from those 2,000 families in the UK to 36 a day, but the time they spent staring at a screen was at least 3 times as high, at 115 minutes per day. So I think the idea about these ferry tour operators were trying to say, hey, promote this idea about use our service and get out there. But the finding that they got from the research they hired out is really remarkably scary to me. And so much so that we're seeing news stories saying, hey, there's something wrong with our young people. There's something wrong with the addictive nature of these phones. And so even the Apple website had to start a families page to sort of say, hey, we want to help you manage, use our devices in a safe way. So there are all kinds of links on this page to try to suggest to parents how they can have their phones used smartly. And really it's about controlling iPads. So a lot of the information I found here was about how to set access conditions for your children to define which apps they're allowed to use and how much time they're allowed to use them. And even back when I had my first Macintosh computer here for the family, going back a number of years, the idea that you could limit a person's use to a certain number of minutes a day or hours a day, and then their time runs out, and in extreme situations you could add more time. These are things that back when computers first came out and first made their way in our homes, we were very conscious about them. And there were cautions. I don't know, some of you may have heard the cautions about don't let your child have a computer in their bedroom because you don't know what's going to be going on there. That's not a good thing. And at the same time, a lot of young people take their phone with them to the bedroom or pretty much in their pocket or their clothes or the backpack, wherever they are. So just a couple of things about parents. There's a short video. This fellow his daughter wanted his attention. This is a picture, a screen grab from a game called Fortnite, which if you teach young boys seem to be terribly addicted to this game. They're really, really connected to it, that they spend a lot of time doing it. And actually sports athletes being interviewed after a hockey game or a baseball game are even talking about playing this game. But this father produces videos of himself, but he captured video of himself and posted it of him telling his daughter that you're not as important as this game. You're not as important as this devices and these things that I'm doing right here, so you're going to have to just leave. But it's sort of the exact opposite message we need to be giving to one another and to our young people. I was in a restaurant last week, no, actually 2 weeks ago, and this woman was with 2 of her friends, and she had a little baby with her. And this little baby was, I'm going to say, 4 to 5 months old. It was just a very, very young baby. And rather than interact with this young baby, she had a full-size iPad that she was pulling up videos of the ABCs and of numbers and counting songs. And this little animated thing was dancing across the screen with letters and numbers, and Mom was engaging in conversation with her friends. But the baby was sort of out of the picture. And in fact, when the baby's eyes turned to wander up and around to look at the lights in the room and to look out the window, the mom was tapping the screen of the iPad. No, 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 pay attention. Pay attention here. Here, look at this wonderful, colorful screen. And I'm sure good nature, mom trying to get the child have a good head start. If you know letters and numbers, it's going to help you with language development. But at the same time, the idea that the screen was the thing that one should pay attention to, even in one younger than 6 months of age, is kind of something that made me go, wow, is this happening? Is this normal? Should this be normal? And I'm sure you've had experiences where you've seen this, but my hope is that you'll tune into your own behaviors to see where you're spending time on screens. So back to Nicholas Carr, he talks about this screen as a glass cage. So airline pilots, when they fly an airplane, a lot of times, he said, they don't even have to look out the windows. They don't see the flight. They basically see a screen in front of them that tells them everything that's going on and tells them how to do it. And a lot of the algorithms that fly the plane are actually automated so that the pilot doesn't have to do anything. They have a screen in front of them that they don't have to look out and fly by seeing where they're going. And Nicholas Carr's take in authoring his book, The Glass Cage, is that we're living our lives that way, that we are spending our time looking at screens instead of looking at people around us or looking at experiences around us. And it's something to really, really pay attention to. And I see the point that Louise has put into the chat about 0 screen time for under 18 months is the recommendation. I'm glad to hear that. So Nicholas says, you know, rather than have screens and computers solve our problems, that's one of the most important things that we need to pay attention to. Thanks for that, Louise. Other age recommendations. And so our own skills sometimes are diminishing if we're off-putting the source. And he's talking about pilots, okay? He's talking about airline pilots. The pilot's skills are actually deteriorating because the computers are doing the work. My argument would be that parent skills are deteriorating because we're off-putting a lot of that work to apps and videos. So a mom can tap a screen and say, look at the numbers in the ABCs, rather than interacting with the child face-to-face, goo-goo gaga, ABC, making sounds and making mouth movements and having that connection with the child. Our parenting skills are different than they once were. Have you heard the quote, we become what we behold, we shape our tools, and then our tools shape us? A lot of people, Marshall McLuhan's the fellow on the right-hand side there, and he's often quoted as being the person who has said that, but it's actually his friend, Father John Culkin, on the left-hand side, who's actually the person who said this, and it's written down and attributed to him in some writing that he did. But the two of them were very close friends and were very like-minded, and there's no argument that Marshall McLuhan would have had a similar thought. But Father John, this quote, we shape our tools and then the tools shape us, is something that a lot of us are realizing. We are changing and our young people are changing and becoming different people in large part because of the way that they're interacting with devices. And in fact, the way we behave is changing our very memories of the things that we do. I did a little bit of research on the effects of smartphone photography, and it turns out that if you take a phone where you go, they did this experiment with, this is again in California, this is a tour of a particular church, I think it's at Stanford University, on campus or just off campus. And they took people on a tour there, and some of the people had phones and were told, take photographs of some interesting things. And other people's were not to have their phones turned on. It turns out that the people that had the best memory of the experience of all the details and facts that were shared on the tour about this building are the people that didn't bother to take photos. They didn't bother to frame up something to make it look pretty. They didn't bother to capture particular elements in their phone. The people that were present and just experiencing it had the far richer memory. And we're in a point where now the memories that we're having are basically the photos. The photos are the memories. They're the things that are triggering what we have, what we experience. We can point to it and tell it and somehow prove that it's real because it shows up in a photograph. But one of the other things that's happening is that people are actually doing experiences for the sheer purpose of capturing it on video so that they can tell a story and having done something, whether it's an Instagram post or a YouTube post, something extraordinary. So is it safe to do these types of things? This was an article about how dangerous it is because the risk-taking that we're doing to capture those shots that have never been done before is changing our safety, affecting us. But I think we need to take some time to actually experience some things firsthand. So here's a couple of questions for you. Let's take this one. Let's try this one with the little photo object, and maybe you can choose a check or a check mark or an X on that bottom photo where you insert a photo, a piece of clip art under common symbols. Clip art, common symbols, you'll see check mark or X. What do you think? Do you share photos of your kids online? The bottom tool, that's right, it's a clip art image. And under share photos of kids online. Oh, no kids, just cats. Thanks, Ramona. So there's a bunch of check marks and a no and a check mark. I think it's very normal. Some people are calling this, instead of parenting, they're calling it sharington. And I think there's a lot that parents can get out of this idea about the shared experience of, hey, my kids are doing this, hey, your kids are doing that. But the question is about whether or not we should be doing that. And one of the things that we have to be wary of is that young people posting photos of them very young, they may have to deal with some of these photos down the road. So if if parents post photos of children in, let's say, in the bathtub or something that's very personal and private, and it's fun as a child to share those images and those memories with other people, but down the road those images may impact that young person in a way when they get to high school. If those photos are searchable or findable or discovered, that there might be something that they may have to deal with. And of course, there are people that talk about online predators favoring seeking out certain types of photos of young people. But the sharing that we do, we just have to be careful that we do it in ways that are safe and secure and protected. Another checkmark question for you. Do you follow your kids online? It's again under the bottom symbol with a check mark or an X. Do you follow your kids online? Do they have accounts? And if you'd like to do text to explain, you could do that. Personally, I'll tell you that it took me a while to have my daughters allow me to see what they post online, and they grew up in the age where text messaging with MSN Messenger, some of you may be familiar with that, but now they, on their Instagram accounts, will allow that sharing. So the X's, I'm not sure if that means that your kids don't have accounts online, or that you don't check up on them, or if they don't have devices. There's a number of possibilities there. But one of the things that is a big question is should you? Should you keep track of? And we've got young people with devices that we're giving to them without any instruction a lot of the time about what appropriate use is. And knowing what I know from this research, I would certainly limit the applications and the amount of time that a young person is allowed to use those devices. But whether or not they're allowed to share of their own lives in spaces like Instagram and Pinterest and Snapchat, those tools have permissions on them that will allow people to share privately, and that's really important. I think it's a good idea to follow them online. If they do have an account, hopefully they have a trusting relationship with you, that they're sharing things that are shareable, that a parent shouldn't be embarrassed by, or a young person shouldn't. One of the things we're dealing with is a lot of young people today don't have the freedom to relate and get together physically face-to-face with young people the way we once did, where we hopped on bikes and hung out into the night. And for some reason, communities of young people getting together on the street or in the park or in the neighborhood or in the playground, it's less and less common. Ramona took the phones away from the cats. Too many catnip videos. Thanks for keeping it light, Ramona. I appreciate that. But yeah, being aware of what your kids are doing, I think, is pretty important. So let's just talk briefly. One of the things we shared last time was about what research says about your phone at night and how it impacts your sleep. And the curious question is this: where does your phone sleep? Again, try that little check mark. And is your phone in the bedroom, or is your phone elsewhere? Let's use the little check mark tool and indicate at nighttime. Excellent. This question, actually, I changed my habit. I told the story briefly before. Arianna Huffington, the woman who started the Huffington Post, talked about the importance of her having a space where that phone is totally not going in the bedroom. And she was very solid in her explanation of why. And when I changed that habit, it changed the way I rest. It changed the way I get up in the morning. It changed a lot of habits, just having it charged somewhere else. So a lot of people will say, well, I have to have my alarm. I have to have that get me up. And I found by having the alarm go off elsewhere, I have to get up to turn it off because it's so annoying. So I'm just reading the comment there. Students say they're up till 1 a.m. on their phones and their parents don't know. Yeah, we know this is the case. The research is pointing to the fact that young people are spending more time on their phones than their parents know. And the glow of the light on that phone, in fact, is something that is actually impacting young people's sleep and therefore their health and their wellness and their happiness. And some of that we talked about last time, the effect of sleep. But one of the things we have to do as the adult is to set the example. So I have a few hacks for you. I'm going to start with some hacks about school. What it is that we when we're at school, we still use our phones to connect with our friends and colleagues that are at other schools or they're at home or where our spouse is at. But taking the time to not have that phone out at school is something I would encourage you to try. Could you go a day or two without looking at your phone during school hours? And just pay attention to the faces and stories of your students and your colleagues. And then connect with your loved others face to face on a day and see how that works out for you. See if you have a different quality of an experience. Steven Spielberg, this quote, it's hard to believe this quote is from 2002. I'll let you read it yourself. But this is in the age when phones were not smartphones. They were very much Blackberries and what you might call a dumb phone, just a phone with the ability to text and make phone calls. But back in 2002, he's quoted as saying that it can really interrupt that idea, an idea interrupter. So one of the things I encourage people to do with their students is go for a walk. Go without a phone. Go for a walk on your lunchtime or your break time. Physical activity is really, really good for you. Physical activity out of doors is really, really good for you. Shinro-ruku, there's a name for something called forest bathing. That is an activity that folks do in Japan. There's something in the air in forests that is really healthy. The biologicals that are released by plant lives have a positive impact on those that are lucky enough to experience them. But if you go out and experience them firsthand, try it maybe without a phone to just see if you can pay attention, shift your attention from those other things that fall forgotten at the end of the day and tune in to the other things that are around you. Does anybody do that? Do you have an outdoor activity, something that you do? I'm curious if you schedule that. Is there a key word you could type on the screen for something that you deliberately do outside? Mood walks. Thanks, Louise. I'm going to bookmark that one. Is there anything that you do out of doors? Like, I hear of people that go on a nightly walk, and I'm kind of envious. I got my steps today because I went golfing today, so I'm well over my 10K steps. But there's something about that experience of doing something active: gardening, walking, golfing, geocaching. Love it. Tapping into my technological love of that. I have some great photos from doing that experience with my son, but I again, I haven't done that in a little bit. I got to get back to that. Cycling, really good. And they have it is it sort of forces them to get out. Baseball catch with the kids. Yeah, my father was one who was always out playing with the kids. Like, I grew up with 4 brothers. There are 5 boys, and we did a lot of street football, street baseball, street hockey. But my dad was one that was regularly out there with us. Playgrounds with children. Very good. Thanks, MJ, for that as well. So that's where memories are made. Doing those things. They're healthy for you physically, but they're also healthy for you mentally. And Louise has included another link that is also good that we can follow up with some other ideas on that. Camping. Love it. Thank you. Well, one of the things that this is a photograph of my twin brother, Todd, and my father before he passed away this past December. And one of the things that I lean on is that my dad was one who loved to tell stories. and you couldn't help but look at him as he told stories in such a joyous way. But it's a skill, I think, worth teaching young people, because one of the things that the teacher earlier from Stanford is quoted as saying is, young people, they don't, actually Jean Twenge said it, they don't have the time to maintain eye contact. They can't do it. Their attention, there's a discomfort with that because it is so foreign to them to actually have a face-to-face conversation and to maintain that eye contact. And in fact, think back to that baby whose mom was actively putting a screen in front instead of the face-to-face contact. But it's a skill. It's something that we should be doing. This is it. Jean is talking about students wouldn't look her in the eye, and they won't read long passages, so the attention span is not there anymore. So one of the things I suggest is that schools need to adapt their spaces. Young people used to have spaces to do stuff, and we got to a point the spaces were not safe, so a lot of them were removed, or we've given spaces over to specific populations of children, so only students of a certain age are able to use this equipment or that equipment. You won't see swings at a lot of schools because they're not safe. But this idea about giving young people a chance to go and interact so they can have that eye contact. And I'm just reading Paula's point there about getting attention to people. A quote to say, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, and they all look and pay attention. So I wonder if there's a family connection to that. 1, 2, 3, all the phones away, eyes on me. At dinner time, certainly. School hack, teach play. Could we teach young people how to use, what's that, hopscotch or Foursquare, and teach young people to eat healthy snacks when they're at their recess? There's actually articles, I don't know if this is the one that I linked to. I think it's linked in the reference material at the very end of this presentation. But the government in the United States put together ways to design recess for young people, because the young people don't know how to use that 15 to 20 minute break in an appropriate way. They don't know how to use it for physical fitness or socializing. They use a lot of times in ways that are negative. And one of the ways that I saw it used regularly negatively was young people disappearing into their phones, sitting next to the wall or sitting in the hallway, playing a game or texting or watching videos on YouTube rather than interacting with young people. But these spaces are needed for young people. So if you haven't got them at your school, it might be something that would be a good hack to try and promote. Here's my fill in the blank quiz for the day. People with close personal ties what? People with close personal ties. How would you finish that quote? Again, we're going to use the text tool here for this one. People with close personal ties, fill in the blank. I'm going to use large font here. Are happier. Melanie. Bingo. Thank you. People with close personal ties. Anybody else want to play? Let's see. Live longer. Bingo. The live longer is actually supported by research I saw on 60 Minutes about 3 years ago, where they researched people who, the one commonality among people in the retirement area in Florida, long story, but I'll share the short version, those that did activities where other people did them lived the longest. If you smoked, as long as you smoked with other people, you weren't so bad off. If you drank, as long as you drank with other people, you were good. Any of those activities you did by yourself and you died a shorter life. Thanks for the suggestion about happier and live longer, personal ties. And the way to gain personal ties is to interact with people face to face. One of the ways you can do this is by unplugging. There's an actual movement in the United States. I think it's international, probably very soon will be international. This past March, they had a day where people said, you know what, for an entire day we're going to unplug, and they were actually marketing these phones where you could zip your phone in a bag and let it sleep for the day. But that's how we do make those connections. One of the hacks you can do at school or at home is turn off the Wi-Fi. If the Wi-Fi is off, people tend to interact. People tend to not be on their phone. They're forced to do other things. They're doing habits like drawing or reading a book or having a conversation with someone. Maybe they come into the living room to watch television as a group. And we know that the story in France that they're looking at next year, having students up to, I think it's grade 8 or 9, not be allowed to have phones at school. And we know this was tried in the United States when phones first were coming out. Again, it was BlackBerry time back then. And there were stores that started renting space for $1 a day. You could leave your phone protected, because if it was at school and it was out or it was in the locker even, it would be taken away. But by not having the phone, people pay attention to one another, and it's a skill that is well worth working on if we want people to live longer and live in joy. The idea is to use, as Jean Twenge says, use it as a tool, but not have it be a tool that uses you. Don't let it crowd out the healthy things in life. Other things you can do at school is encourage people to move, and you can do this on your own. Some of the suggestions that you had about the outdoor activities were wonderful. I think I might be in a little bit of a delay there based on a little bit of a click there. I'm going to click through again. So physical activity, we sort of talked about that, so I'm going to skip ahead to that. But one of the things that you might want to do is check out a course at Yale. There's a course called the Happiness Course. Let me see. And it's actually talking about some of the things that we're talking about here. Okay, those funny things, maybe we got a 30-second delay. Love the power outage we had a few weeks ago. Nice. A school hack, teachresiliency.ca. You know, when people are suffering the effects of loneliness and of anxiety and too much stress, and even school avoidance, which seems to be becoming rampant. I certainly, in my years as a student success teacher, the last 7 years of my career, it was such a huge, huge issue. but resiliency. And this website's got a number of different activities that you can participate in or that you can teach young people. But certainly there are a number of reasons you can share with students about why they might want to put their phone away and not jumping around. Is that happening for everybody? The slides jumping? Seems to be the memory is delayed on the computer. So there are reasons to put your phone away: the fear of missing out and lack of concentration, realities being different. Maybe I'll just pause for a second because of that jumping around. One of the things that I'd like to share with everybody is some applications and some tools that are actually on the phones that can actually help you have a better, healthier experience using the phone. And so I'm going to move ahead to that. Hopefully it's going to let me get there. Okay. So if everyone's okay, I just want to pull these are just tools that I know about. And there's a spot a little bit later on where I'm going to invite you to maybe share some things that you are aware of that I don't. Some minor audio issues, okay. One of the apps that is on my phone is just called MindShift. And it's actually got some really healthy suggestions about habits that you can undertake to reduce anxiety and reduce stress in your own life. So again, these are all hyperlinked on the actual presentation if you want to follow up and find them. I'll share actually it'll be on the link to slideshare.net. Another one, Super Better. This is one, the woman who created this app has actually done a lot of research on gaming and created this game where you actually try to accomplish tasks and get points. And she's gamified the whole idea about using your phone to be healthy. But it's about undertaking quests and making the positive habits in your life be things that you try to get power-ups about doing those things. But Super Better is, there's actually a book with that in the title that she's written. But this is the game is free and you can download it, and if it's something that you or your family members would like to try, it's well worth checking out. Pacifica is an app that randomly checks in with me to see how are you doing, how are you feeling, and you can actually tell it what part of your life you want help with. So I just have it check in with me and say, hey, put your finger on it today. Where are you, 1 to 10? How are you feeling today? What's going on? Just being conscious of how you're feeling rather than just going from information to information to information. Those time for quiet. And I see Louise has put the link down below. Thank you, Louise. If others are aware, we can paste those there as well. But Pacifica, this is kind of the information that it kind of looks at. One Tomato is a focusing tool. It actually leads you to pay attention to what matters, and you can specify, I want you to give me 30 minutes to focus on something. And you actually get rewarded for accomplishing the goal of paying attention to something without seeking out the distraction of your phone. Yeah, is school one big marshmallow test? This idea about being able to put off enjoyment and resist the temptation is the biggest identifier of someone who's going to be successful in life, is if you can pass the marshmallow test. Oak, just an app that reminds you to meditate and breathe, and it's got built into it some wonderful sound effects. And Mind Your Mind is a local website. I believe it was started in London region, where health community got together with young people and said, what do we need to have to help you guys out? And they created this website that's now actually functions as an app as well. But it actually has a lot of skills about teaching healthy skills to young people about how to be healthy. Healthy skills, habits of mind, both habits of attention, habits of physical activity, habits of communication. And then Starry Night, it's just an app where you can drag your finger around the screen and animate, and it just chill. It's just a spot to do nothing, to let yourself go zen instead of paying attention to something. Mind Your Mind has done OTF Connect sessions soon. Well, good to hear that. And then there are apps that are free that you can download that will actually help you measure how addicted you are to your phone. That will actually track where you spend your time and how much time you spend on them. I forget what this one was called. Break Free. Break Free is one of these apps. But there are others out there that will track what you're doing so you can pay attention to what you're doing. So here's my question. Is there an app out there I should know about? If there is, if you could take a moment and maybe click the letter A there to type some text on there, is there something else, a website or an app related to healthy mindfulness that we could share with everyone, that other people could follow up? And while we're doing that, I will share with you the fact that that is my phone on the right-hand side. And one of the slides that I will share later on, it's coming up in just a moment, is about the fact that I don't have a whole lot of alerts on my phone. I have, on the front page of my phone there, you can see 9 times, I don't know, it's probably 50 apps there or more. And the alerts, the number of alerts that are on my phone are minimal. I get alerts for things that are really important, and that's about it. And what some would argue, email is one I don't even need to have, because I check email when I feel like checking it. I don't check it when I get a message there. I check it at times throughout my day. So we got freedom.to. Thanks for sharing that. Calm app and Calm schools. Very good. I'll be able to follow these up. I'm just going to take a quick note here for myself. Thanks for those. If others that we should know about, Headspace, thank you. If you could put them in the chat, I'm going to move on from this slide, but if you haven't had a chance to put something in, maybe you can add it later. And Healthy Minds, another one, thank you. Smiling Minds, oh my goodness. So, let's move on to the final section of my presentation, which is life hacks. This is stuff that's good for you. It just makes sense for you. Number one, avoid having your phone in your bedroom. If you have that as a habit, try without it and see if you're not happier and more organized and a better spirit, a better sleep. Use your bedroom to sleep instead of having access to your phone. Dim the backlight on your phone is a life hack. Not only does it save your battery power, but it actually is easier on your eyes. And if you use your phone before going to bed, uh-oh, is that me? Somehow, I don't know if you could hear that or not, but my computer started playing some great music. I think an audio signal must have turned it on. Anyway, dim that backlight. Schedule when you check in to your phone, and if you don't know how to turn off alerts, I just put a little, and I'm sure it's similar on Android devices, but you go to the notifications and just turn them off. So our notifications really needed for the apps that you pay attention to. Here's a life hack. Turn off the Wi-Fi. Have a time at night when, you know what, the Wi-Fi goes off. We know that young people are spending a lot of times on their phones past their bedtime. If you have a teenager and you're in your home, maybe 10 o'clock the Wi-Fi goes off, maybe earlier, maybe a little later, but maybe it goes off for everybody. And then everyone can check in the morning when it comes back on. Be with people who are with you. Some people have a basket where they'll put their phones. I've heard of this being done at restaurants too, where everyone will put their phone in the middle of the table, and whoever reaches for their phone first is the one responsible to pay the bill. So there's a serious temptation you can withhold it if money's on the line. But simply putting your phone in a place that is out of sight, out of mind, so you don't have to pay attention to it. And again, go back to the research that says that even if the phone is nearby, the fact that it's nearby, your brain will pay partial attention to it just in case there's a vibration or a message or a notification that comes through. But if it's out of sight, out of mind, and you schedule when you're going to check into it, that's the better tip. A life hack: turn off the data. Turn off the data when you're out, or turn off the data on your children's phone is another way to do that. So that if they don't have access to the data, they're not going to be tempted to waste their time on watching videos or playing games. They're going to maybe be forced to interact with people. One of the interesting hacks I came was this is becoming popular. Apparently a few famous people have been seen, Rihanna and Kim Kardashian, two of them, with dumb phones, or phones that are only good for texting. And they may have this other phone, but they don't have it with them all the time. And when they need to be able to be reached by phone for a serious, important something, they maybe have that with them. But when they're interacting with other people, this dumb phone prevents them from going on the internet, surfing, or watching videos, or reading things they don't need to read. Ramona, you're smart to leave it in the truck while golfing. Last week I golfed. I forgot my phone, and I think it was a blessing in disguise. I learned a new way to play. A life hack, Ramona has just mentioned it: leave the phone behind. We used to get by quite all right with paper maps in our cars, and in an emergency, if we'd flag someone down who had a phone, you can survive without it. And you might be paying a lot more attention to what's happening on the road or what's happening around you. A life hack, one of the things I came across was about this idea that people staring down at their phones a lot of the time get repetitive stress injuries. And so being able to stretch your wrist and stretch your neck are important. Blink and focus and pay attention. You know, snow blindness is about too much information, too much light coming in. So having that filter to prevent snow blindness will limit the rays that come in. And you can limit the things that come to you as well if you take the time to look away, to refresh your eyesight, and actually doing far focused. Focus on things way out on the horizon as well as things close to you. Vary your focus so that we don't have a whole generation of people having glasses because they're able to read up close but not far away. A life hack about the signals coming from your phone that might not be healthy for your brain is to use earbuds when making phone calls. And one of the biggest ones has got to be find quiet and relish it. Choose wise foods. I mean, and have them with people. Have those foods with people that are not on their phone, so you're having conversations with folks. Read a book. I'm going to skip this question about because we lost a little bit of time due to technical glitches. But get away. Get out and about. I like that this person is so casually looking at the trees while riding away. There's something about that, paying attention to the world that you're in. A friend of mine does this relaxation thing where she snaps on her virtual goggles and puts herself at a beach to chill out. So in the school environment, a stressful time, stressful day, the phone can be an escape, especially in things like the winter time where you don't want to go outside, that it's cold. You can actually do a virtual three-dimensional tour where you kick back and hear and see a place that's very peaceful. Life hack, reflect. This is a photo from my deck at one time. But the idea about taking time to quietly think, and maybe with a pen in hand to write things down. You might think about, when's the last time you had 10 full minutes of total quiet? That's when your brain actually goes into the creative mode, if you get the chance. Another life hack is to make stuff. Have your hands be busy doing things. Science really talks about how this is really, really a healthy thing for all ages. Whether your brain is deteriorating due to Alzheimer's, or if you're a young person, creating and making things helps the neurons stay in shape. It actually helps you have more joy in your life to do things rather than look at things. Make stuff. This is Jim Carrey. I encourage you to look for Jim Carrey video. There's a video that's linked on this video about he's gone into he's an artist now. He's not just an actor. He creates the most incredible visual arts, but he's engaged in creating and actively doing things with his mind and with his body and his creativity, rather than just being a passive recipient of information through a phone or iPad or television or other device. And just one last thing, let me share this with you, and then there's 2 other slides I'd like to share just as thoughts. This is a light way that you can actually leave Google. You can opt out of Google. Have you seen this link? Maybe I'm going to see if I can grab this for you. And you know what? I think this will be the last. You do, thank you. I was just searching for it. Okay, I see Reed is marked as back. Thanks. So just to put a lid on this, being okay with being ungoogled or to be unplugged, although it may seem totally abnormal to people, it sets a great example to people. And I'm just going to leave 2 brief quotes for you from the Dalai Lama. This is a Book of Joy, which I read recently, actually last summer. I've re-listened to it in chunks since. But the more time you think about yourself, the more suffering you experience. When you're very much into yourself and what other people are thinking about you and liking about you or referring to about you, you suffer. And I think this is borne out by the research that's been quoted earlier. But helping others and taking care of others and paying attention to others is where you get joy and live a happy life. Let's go to, this is the which I think says a lot about the importance of linking. But have a final thought to summarize.
Looks like Rod's got a major audio lag right now, so I'm going to jump in when you guys are thinking about
I'll leave
what
that for you to think
is
about.
that you're being left with, so don't hesitate to drop that into the chat. Oh no, we lost Rod. Okay, let's give him a minute to come back, because I'm sure he will. While he's coming back, I am going to just jump ahead. As Rod said, his SlideShare has all these clickable links in it, and so the link for that is on the resource page, which I'm going to dump into the chat here right now. And so you'll already have access to that. Here we go. And we also want to make sure that you guys are able to give feedback on tonight's session. And we know that the technology problems impacted things a bit, but you guys were great contributors to the discussion, and Rod really thoughtfully posed a lot of these, the other side of the technology debate, because certainly, as he said, for a long time, we've really been promoting use of technology in the classrooms, and so it's always important to be mindful about how and what, and being aware of what's happening in the rest of kids' lives and in our lives, and where that's taking us. That's great, Reed, being connected, but don't have to be available. I'm going to, let me just jump over here for a second. Oh, that's great. Rod's got his image credits. And that big Google link in the middle of the page is the feedback link for tonight's session. So when you exit out of this session, it should actually take you straight to the link. But just in case it does not, I am going to go and grab that out there for you as well and drop that into the chat so that you can go right to it. That is not it. Okay, that's weird. I clicked on it. It disappeared. Wow, technology's given us all kinds of fun tonight. But thank you all for your participation tonight. There's the feedback link there. And certainly we thank Rod, just in case he doesn't make it back in. His computer may have finally hit maximum capacity. He'll be sorry to have not been able to say a proper goodbye to you guys. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for bringing this learning back into your classroom and having it impact how you look at technology in your teaching and learning spaces. And I want to make sure that you also know that there's a whole bunch more sessions coming up for the rest of this month, and some of them relate to technology and some of them do not. And we've had quite a few wellness sessions this year, and so definitely go and check out the past resources. Oh, that took you to resources, not the feedback. Okay, thanks for that heads up. Oh, joyful, joyful. If you click right on the link in the middle of the page, it does not seem to do that. Let me try one more time. Okay. Google, you are not my friend tonight. Okay, I will get that and come back to you with it. But as I was saying there, is that if you go to the resource page for OTF Connects and go to the past webinars, so that resource link that Google link is actually taking you to, it has, you can go and search. There's hundreds of OTF Connect sessions that have been held, and there is a category on wellness. So if that is of particular interest to you, it is, there are several there, including the one by Mind Your Mind. And there's Rod back. Oh, good. I'm glad we were able to hang on long enough for Rod to rejoin us so that he could say a proper goodbye. Oh, and now my mouse isn't even working. Oh, this is just a lot of fun tonight. All right, Rod, does your microphone still work?
Maybe, yeah, I think it does. My gosh, it was a little bit of a battle tonight, Louise. Thanks for your support. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around.
No problem. I'm going to try and get my mouse back a little bit here so that I can go back to your slide. We already took a quick look at your link stages, reminded them it's available on SlideShare and that link will all come to them. But you might want to finish with their finishing thoughts. A couple people did post some finishing thoughts there in the chat, which you probably can't see anymore, but Reeb said you can be connected but don't have to be available 24/7, and that seemed like a good way to wrap things up.
Oh, that's a perfect ending. Thank you, Reeb. That's wonderful.
And thank you all so much. And I'm really sorry it's not letting me go. Oh, wait, maybe it is now. Oh, here we go. There. All right. I don't even know what link that is anymore. I believe that's the proper link to the feedback page. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We do hope to see you again, and definitely fill out that feedback form. There's a certificate link for you at the end of that. And Rod, thank you so much for your time and effort and for really bringing us through that dialogue, which is such an important one right now.
Yeah, thanks again, Louise. Thanks, everyone.
To see you again soon. Take care.